Hello, I'm Natasha Chilingarian.
And I'm Michael Ogden. This is Shared Accounts with CU Times, sponsored this month by Bud Financial. Check them out at thisisbud.com. Thank you, Bud Financial. All right, I did some rabbit holing recently on a topic I've never thought much about, and that's numbers, specifically the number 2025. And I found out a few things. First, every 25 years, the Catholic Church deems a year the year of Jubilee. And 2025 is such a year, and the theme this year is Pilgrims of Hope. I'm not Catholic. I don't know what this means, but happy Pilgrims of Hope. Second, for the Chinese Lunar New Year, 2025 is the year of the wood snake, which symbolizes resilience, wisdom, and thoughtful progress. The Lunar New Year in 2025 begins on January 29, a bit after this episode comes out. So, happy Chinese New Year. Finally, according to numerologists, 2025 is the numerology year of 9 because you can add those numbers together and get 9. Great. What does it mean? Well, New Age kids, it means this is a time of completion, transformation, and new beginnings. It's a time to complete unfinished business, reach conclusions, and tie up loose ends. Let's check the list. Complete unfinished business. Finished reading my intro. Check. Reach conclusions. I need to get a hobby, and I hate math and numbers. Check. Tie up loose ends. All right, this is the easy one. Welcome to Shared Accounts with CU Times. Check. Coming up, we're talking with Jason Stverak, Chief Advocacy Officer at the Defense Credit Union Council. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is when I would say, first, let's take a break from the week and check in with Natasha Hayen. But Natasha is not able to join us today. I want to kind of put a flag in the time when we're recording this particular segment of the show. The wildfires are going on in LA. Natasha lives just outside of LA up in the mountains, and today the town she lives in shut off all power to the town just out of precautions because of the high winds and the wildfire risks. So she's not able to join us. She is fine. She, last I heard, was about 60 miles maybe from the nearest large fire going on. But anyway, I just wanted to let you all know that that is what's going on. So instead, I'm going to bring in producer Zach. Hey, Zach.
Putting on my Natasha voice. Hey,
That was a terrible Natasha impression. Okay, so speaking of Mother Nature, though, really quick, with the wildfires, just devastating things happening in the Los Angeles area, you guys had a bit of your own mess in the past week. You guys were part of in that path of that huge snowstorm that went through right at the middle of the country. How'd that go?
We were fortunate that we were stocked up, never lost power or anything, but we got a good 12 inches or so.
Wow.
Weren't able to leave the house for about 2 days. We're in a snow emergency.
It
is all past. Roads are clear now, but
yeah,
not having anywhere to go, it wasn't anything compared to the wildfires.
Of course.
Yeah. It was just kind of a snow day, but I'm fully remote, so a snow day where I still have to work.
Right. So you and your wife have a nearly 2-year-old little girl. What did she think of the snow?
She loved it.
Oh.
Last year was her first snow, and she loved it until she touched it and then had a fit. This year, her only fit was when she was turning bright red and we made her go inside.
Sure. Oh, kids. They're great. All right. So normally I would ask Natasha this, but I want to ask you, Zach. I've never gotten to ask you. What'd you watch this past week? Anything interesting?
Nothing interesting.
Oh.
Due to the aforementioned toddler.
Yeah.
It's basically what can we sneak in when she falls asleep. So the one show that I have watched in the last week is snippets about 15 minutes at a time of a reality show called Below Deck that is 10 years old.
You and Natasha were talking about this, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I recommended it to her.
Oh, okay. Great. All right. Below Deck. You're a reality person. Okay.
It's terrible.
Yeah. Okay. Very quickly, I just want to point this one movie out that I watched very recently. A movie I haven't seen since 1992. I saw it in an art house theater in Ohio. Singles. Do you remember that movie? Did you ever see that?
I don't. So for a second, I thought you said Swingers, and I got excited.
No.
I don't know if I've seen Singles.
Singles is a Cameron Crowe movie. Came out in 92. It has Bridget Fonda, Kira Sedgwick, Matt Dillon, Campbell Scott, and a very young members of Pearl Jam are in it. Funny story, Nirvana was asked to be in the movie, and they were like, hell no, man, we're not going to sell out.
Yeah.
And so that's funny. Fun movie. Singles. I mean, it really captures that moment of the early 90s. The vibe in Seattle, the coffee shops, just the clothes. It's really an incredible watch.
Yeah, I'll have to watch it and compare it to my experience being 6 in 1992.
Fine. Oh my God. All right. With that, I am moving on to the damn interview. Thanks, Zach. So again, Natasha will be included in the interview. It's just this opening segment she's not around for. But in this interview with Jason, I want to point out 3 quick things. Jason gets into his thoughts about CFPB, and we know what the industry thinks of CFPB, but he talks about how the agency has gone well beyond its mandate, like we've heard from others, but also about his hopes about being able to push back dramatically against some of its moves in 2025 when the new Trump administration gets settled into D.C. Secondly, he talks about some things that are keeping him up at night, including, and I found this topic is very disturbing, but that idea that we've heard about being floated around about combining the FDIC and the NCUA, which he says could lead to the beginning of the end of credit unions. It's a very scary concept. And third, he gives us a peek back in his life growing up in the Dakotas, which includes this restaurant that serves apparently the best bread pudding of all time. And I love bread pudding. Also, he talks about his family-run candy store. Zach, we love candy. Yeah?
Anyone that listened to our Halloween episode would know that.
That's right. All right, everybody. We have all of that coming up next. Hey, listeners. This episode is excitedly sponsored by our friends at Bud Financial. Trusted by credit unions and core banking providers, Bud Financial is an expert in transaction intelligence. Bud Financial's plug-and-play personalization platform improves member financial health, boosts cross-sell, and has been shown to grow deposits by an average of over $6,000 per member. That's incredible. These people at Bud Financial are super nice, very fun. I really enjoy them. Find out more about Bud Financial at thisisbud.com. That's thisisbud.com. Bud Financial.
Joining us in the virtual studio today is Jason Stverak, Chief Advocacy Officer at the Defense Credit Union Council, also known as DCUC. Hey, Jason, welcome to Shared Accounts.
Hey, how are y'all doing? It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to hear you.
So happy to have you here, Jason. We are very excited. So yeah, Jason, there's so much to discuss with you. So we're going to try to do our best to get through as many topics and credit union regulatory issues with you as possible. First, just to kind of help our audience get to know you a little bit better, because I know you are fairly new to your role at DCUC, can you just give us a quick background on your history, your career history inside the credit union world?
Well, absolutely. And again, once again, thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk to you and your audience. I think my love of credit unions began when I was 7 years old.
Oh.
I opened up my account at Black Hills Federal Credit Union in Rapid City, South Dakota. Yeah. And I've been a credit union member ever since. I'm actually a member of 3 credit unions right now.
Yes.
In terms of my understanding of the positive impact that credit unions can make in their communities on a daily basis, that's been written into my DNA. In terms of my career history, I spent close to 8 years up on Capitol Hill, primarily working for, at the time, then Congressman Kevin Cramer at large from North Dakota, and then moved over with him to the Senate when he won election in 2018. My role was not only communications director in the House, but also handling economic and banking related issues. When the senator moved over to the Senate and I was asked to be his deputy chief of staff, I was his staff member for the banking committee, which means I had all housing, economics, small business, that entire portfolio. And it was something that I will treasure that opportunity to this day. I got to see the incredible impact that can happen as a staff member for a United States Senator in dramatic times, as I was working for the Senator during COVID shutdowns.
Yeah.
In helping to draft and put together and be a part of economic response and stimulus packages from the PPP program to working with the Small Business Administration. But I got the opportunity to interview for and become the Deputy Chief Advocacy Officer at Credit Union National Association, or CUNA. It was the one job I would have left Capitol Hill for, and I was honored to go to work for someone I admired in the industry for a long time, Ryan Donovan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Came down to the Hill, and it was kind of a roller coaster opportunities as things move forward, with Ryan moving on, stepping up and being interim chief advocacy officer, then the mergers that happened between CUNA and NAFCU and become ACU. And then I was blessed, and I truly mean this, blessed to, I think, end up where I was always meant to be in life. And that was working for and on behalf of defense credit unions. The incredible family that is at DCUC, not only in the association office, but more importantly, amongst our members, in the way that they put service above everything else. It's part of that cooperative and collaborative principles of the credit union movement that I hold deep to my heart. So that's kind of a long way to say that I'm incredibly blessed to be here on a daily basis. And I drive into DC, and I think I'm one of the few people that gets to say, I love the people I work for, and I love the people that I fight for up on Capitol Hill. You know, the millions upon millions of service members, their families, their extended families, veterans, and help them from the beginning to the end of their financial life cycle, allow credit unions to have the opportunity to help make their dreams come true.
Fantastic. I have a couple of quick follow-up questions for you, Jason.
Absolutely.
One, do you still have more hair than Ryan Donovan?
I do. Though
Okay,
I
great.
am losing some. I have a 10-year-old son, so it's turning gray and thinning as we speak right now. So
Excellent. Also, I did want to ask, do you ever miss the days of being on the floor of the Senate?
I was just up on the Hill right now doing a couple meetings, and honestly, I'd say no.
Okay.
Because it's kind of like an assembly line. And you do a meeting, you pass a bill, or you do something for it to go nowhere. And that's kind of the dysfunction that you have in Congress right now that you didn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I think that's to a detriment to our democracy.
Okay. Thanks for that answer. And that was very straightforward. I'm glad you are where you are. I'll say it that way. All right. I want to get into the meat of some of the issues we want to talk about, because I feel like if we lived in a soap opera, the CFPB has really become a character everyone loves to hate, kind of like Victor Newman on Days of Our Lives. I loved him, but maybe hate's a strong word, but you get the point. Overall, what are your and DCUC's thoughts on the CFPB's function and existence?
I mean, it's a necessary evil out there. I can understand why it was created out of the concern and fear of the financial crisis of 07, 08, and 09, and its purpose for consumer protection. But it's kind of that DC, and I'm putting quotes around this, animal that has grown and grown and grown, and where there's been a vacuum, they've inserted themselves in there. You know, now they're talking about Google Pay, and they're injecting themselves now into insurance, because the products that a credit union or a bank may offer require insurance, so they're kind of moving there. I think that the CFPB has grown well beyond its mandate of what it was there for.
Okay.
Ideally, the agency was never created, because I know that as member-owned institutions, credit unions do an incredibly fantastic job of being responsive to its members and taking care of them, and not being financial bad actors. But the political will, I mean, there's 53 Republican votes in the Senate. The ranking member of the Senate Banking Committee, this was her creation. I don't think there's 60 votes to get rid of it. So I think now is the time for us to push for dramatic reforms at the CFPB, and we've advanced those in letters to Congress over the past month in terms of create a 3 to 5 member commission, so that isn't just one person having all this authority. And I understand while the Supreme Court ruled its funding process is constitutional, let's get it underneath Congress like every other agency, so that there is some accountability back to the people through their elected representatives in the House and the Senate. I think those are important things to push forward on. I don't think, a rip and replace, remove the agency even as part of the Doge movement that's popular here in Washington right now, can happen. I think, as my late father would tell you, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. Let's return the agency to what it is. And I've heard some members advocate, let's go line by line with the statute that created it and see if it's living within that mission. And if not, pare it back to what it was supposed to be.
Sure.
I think that's fair, honestly.
Right, absolutely. So, Jason, now speaking of the CFPB, let's dig a little more into some of the specific issues. So, one we wanted to talk with you about is overdraft fees. That's clearly a big topic. And just recently, the CFPB went ahead and issued its final rule on overdraft fees. It was big news. I was actually on PTO when the news came out, and I checked my emails like, oh boy, that's that's a big one. I should have been working. Okay, so we know here at CU Times, you, on behalf of DCUC, have called this final rule misguided. Why? Can you explain to us your thoughts on it?
This is something, when I talk about regulatory overreach, this is the prime example by the CFPB. We understand the issue of overdraft and NSF fees. That's been something that's been talked about, but the market is handling in that. And I'll speak specifically to member-owned institutions, credit unions, that many of them have gone to their members and have advocated for lowering overdraft fees or eliminating them. So they are responding to their members. Other credit unions, through their membership, have made, like, we're going to lower them or we're going to keep them at the same rate. This is not something for a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. to make. As long as the overdraft fee is disclosed and is agreed upon by the credit union and the member, it should be a decision left between them. Because when you make this decision, we are forgetting to ask what happens next. What are you replacing it with? I'm going to date myself. I can still remember going to my local grocery store and seeing a list of names, and some of them my family knew, saying, do not accept a check from this person.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And so do you want that? Do you then open yourself up for lawsuits based upon targeting or, those types of things? What are you going to replace this with? Because you cannot continually ask financial institutions to cover overdrafts if there is no way to provide payment for them. And even lowering it down, I know the argument is, well, why are credit unions concerned about this issue? It's only for $10 billion and above, and that's not the majority of credit unions. I'll agree with you on that. But once you make this dramatic of a change at the top of the financial ecosystem, you're impacting it all the way down the line. Let me give you an example. We have installations that have become joint bases where there is a $100 billion credit union right across the street from a $35 million credit union. If I'm walking in and say, where am I going to open up my account? I have the credit union that is mandated by the CFPB to have an $8 overdraft fee versus the one that is under the limit and can't. So to be able to compete for members, everyone's going to have to meet that new lower rate. You're going to increase the speed of consolidation, and you're going to force mid-size and small credit unions out of business. And at the end of the day, we need those smaller institutions to respond to the needs of the communities that have been overlooked, left behind, and turned away by banks.
So I appreciate you bringing up that example, that specific example, because I spoke with the marketing person for a smaller credit union under 10 billion, well under 10 billion. And she was saying exactly that. She was like, well, hell, this is going to kill us from a competitive standpoint. So I think your argument is ringing true out in the industry right now. I do want to ask a bit more about the CFPB. With the incoming Trump administration, you've already hinted about, some of the changes, but with the change of administration, do you think DC will be more open to see a shift, like how you're talking about, and how the CFPB functions?
I would hope so. I don't have any inside knowledge on what the incoming administration will do. Obviously, with the different regulatory mindset that a Republican Trump administration will have versus a Democrat Biden administration in terms of who they select and the issues that kind of hey, I'm going to put you at the head of CFPB, do X, Y, and Z, that individual will roll back, will have a much more limited in scope regulatory approach, and doors will be open to concerns that banks and credit unions and other financial institutions have when there are issues. So while no insider knowledge on who it might be, our hope is that it is somebody that understands the pressures that credit unions face and will work with us to serve millions of Americans across this country. And if there are issues that arise because there always is, then a way for us to work together to solve them and not make it as such an adversarial relationship that we've lived through for the past 4 years.
Right. Well, and that was actually my next question, Jason, is if you had any thoughts on who might take over for Director Chopra. So you don't have any specific names in mind, I suppose?
No. When the process begins and there's a name floated out there, we will obviously weigh in with the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee and ensure that they have the point of view, not only on behalf of defense and veterans related credit unions, but the entire credit union industry, of the issues that we see and have faced with an overactive, expansive director of the CFPB and why that is bad and why that ultimately hurts Main Street America and small business creation across this country.
Right. Well, if I could just ask another quick follow-up
Yes,
question on the overdraft fee rule, just going back to that really quick. I'm just curious, what is sort of your next step from DCUC's perspective on this final rule, and where do you see it potentially going when Trump takes office, just looking ahead? I mean, does it seem like something that could be easily shot down after we get more of the Republican control in there? Or what are your thoughts on it?
Our hope would be that the incoming administration on January 20th take a look at all of the rules that the CFPB has promulgated, and if there are ones, hopefully like this one, that they can pull back and stop enforcement of, propose a new rule. We would encourage them to do so. I know that there's a lawsuit out there, and I'm glad that that has been done. But, in our letter to the House and Senate committees of jurisdiction, there is a legislative remedy, the Congressional Review Act, where this can quickly be done, voted, taken off the board, and sent to the president's desk and signed and eliminated. I am always wary of the timeline that it takes for a court to make a decision and what that judge will decide. If we can stop bad regulation and repeal bad regulation through legislative action, let's do it now. Let's get it done. Let's not waste time. Let's push and make that happen. And then look to, okay, are there common sense reforms or policies that need to be put in place? Let's do that, but not the way that the CFPB has been doing it over the past 4 years.
All right, let's move on from hammering the CFPB for a moment.
But it's so fun.
I mean, we could keep going for a couple of hours. But I want to ask you, Jason, about the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. It is always a big issue for DCUC each year. Why is this so important for you and your credit unions?
Well, it's becoming more and more important because, as I referenced earlier, the dysfunction that you have in Congress, I'm not sure how many of your listeners are familiar with the term regular order. What it is that's the process. If you remember from Schoolhouse Rock, I'm only a bill and how a bill becomes a law and it goes through a committee and then to the floor. You don't have that much anymore. Unless you're renaming a post office, there are very few issues that actually, there's a bill, it goes to committee, you have debate, the committee passes it, goes to the floor, goes to the other chamber, committee, back to final passage, goes to a conference committee, then sent back to the chambers and then sent to the president. What happens is you have very big pieces of legislation that must pass, i.e. government spending and or the NDAA. And if you go back 10, 15, 20 years, the thought that there would be a banking section on a bill designed to support our warfighters would have been laughed at. But by the mere fact that this is one of the only pieces of legislation that Congress will pass every year, we've had to start weighing in and educating HASC and SASC members on financial services related issues. And the fact that many of the issues that we tackle on behalf of our members are now being addressed in this bill has kind of mandated the importance of its priority. And if you take a look at this last NDAA, there were two very critical issues that would have had negative impacts for the entire credit union industry. You take a look at the continued attempts by Marshall and Durbin to airdrop, put in, threaten to include their interchange text and language. Obviously, we were advocating against that. We're very happy that the bill that passed the Senate yesterday or the day before and on its way to the president's desk doesn't include that. But there was one other issue that DCUC had been speaking out for the last 18 months, and the issue of opening up the Federal Credit Union Act to provide share insurance coverage for non-members. And we took a strong stance. We had encountered some in the industry. We've had to educate members of Congress as well as other credit union leaders on the perils of moving down this line to open up the Federal Credit Union Act. There was an attempt in the House, in committee, to add it to the bill. We pushed strongly back against that, and our members did. There was an attempt to add it in the Rules Committee. We pushed back against that. We continually, worked on the Senate. We ran digital advertising campaigns targeting the leaders of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees to not include it, to the point where we got the entire credit union industry to come behind DCUC's leadership and thought process that this is bad and to not do it. And thankfully, we were glad to see America's credit unions this past summer join us in a joint letter that there should be a clean NDA. None of this stuff should be included. The NDAA is going to only increase in its importance as it remains one of the only bills that can move forward. So whether it is things impacting on the banking sector or Veterans Affairs or management of the banking sector over at DOD, this is going to be the arena, if you want to take Teddy Roosevelt's thought process, in which DCUC is going to be leading the fight on behalf not only defense and veterans related credit unions, but the entire credit union industry.
Great.
Right. So, Jason, you started touching on this a little bit already, but wanted to ask you more about the latest NDAA that has passed. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what are some things about it that you liked and what are some things about it that you were wanting to change that were missing the mark?
Obviously, we would have liked them to take on some of our issues that I think are badly needed reforms or ways to help credit unions, making the CLF fund changes, reforms permanent. This would have been a perfect opportunity to add that. In terms of what we like about it, it doesn't include the bad things about interchange and opening up the Federal Credit Union Act for non-member share insurance coverage. That was not included. We're happy about that. We're happy that, while it's not something primarily we advocate on behalf, we know that tens of millions of active duty members, their families. There's I think close to a 20% pay raise for enlisted personnel. Sure. That's going to be helpful for them. Quality of life related issues. One thing that we would have hoped could have been added that you just saw Chairman-elect of the House Financial Services Committee, French Hill, just introduced his bill called the Military Financial Services Protection Act of 2024. Obviously, this is just the start. He's going to reintroduce it in the next session of Congress. It'll be the Act of 2025. But not many people know, the issues that banks and credit unions are dealing with in terms of providing financial services both on and off base for veterans and our active duty service members and their families due to the hodgepodge of decisions and regulations and laws. We have credit unions that are dealing with forces of status agreements from the 1940s and 50s to laws passed by Congress in the 60s, that it's time to take it as a part of that Doge movement, do a top to bottom, soups to nuts analysis of the rules, regulations, and statutes that credit unions and banks are facing in serving America's warfighters and their families, and come back to Congress with recommendations of things that should and should not be changed in a way to make it more impactful and beneficial. Because the DoD should not be wasting resources in this sector when we need those resources to make sure that as we deploy our men and women into combat zones, that they have the resources they need to come back home safely.
Very quickly, looping back to the new administration coming in, new lawmakers in Congress, new congressional staff, a lot of new people are going to be coming in this new year. How do you approach times like these in DC? What's your strategy with the newbies?
It's kind of that dual, it's an opportunity, but also a concern. You have a lot of new people. So we've been doing outreach to new offices, to the new administration, to the new secretary, nominees. You saw us on the day after the election already reaching out to the incoming Trump administration, laying out DCUC's priorities, talking about issues impacting credit unions, from when Representative Collins was nominated to the VA secretary, for us to reach out and talk about issues. It's about just knocking on those doors and educating new members of the administration, their staff, their staff, new members of Congress, the new legislative directors, the staff, and helping them understand the importance of credit unions and defense credit unions to the entire financial services ecosystem that their constituents interact with on a daily basis. Now, the fact that they're all new is that others will be knocking on the same doors with the information that's detrimental to credit unions. And we would not be doing our job if we are not up there on Capitol Hill now, talking, taking meetings, providing information. But this is where kind of that secret sauce that we have at DCUC is our members are already reaching out to newly elected members of Congress and their staff from the local level and talking to them what's important, what they do to serve their community, and how important their support will be as issues come up in the new session of Congress.
Okay.
Right. I just have to add something in there just kind of as a follow-up to that topic. Jason, you mentioned Ryan Donovan earlier as someone you really looked up to when working at the former CUNA. And I remember we did an interview with him that we ran back when we had a printed magazine. One of the questions was, how do you approach like persuading people of things? Your job involves a lot of persuasion. And I loved his answer. He said, you want to persuade them of something in a way that makes them think it was their idea. And I thought that was so good. I don't know. I just thought that was the best response. And I was like, I just start using that in my own life. I don't know.
He's not wrong.
Is that something you agree with, or do you have a
I do agree with
approach to persuasion?
That's kind of, the key of persuasion is to make someone think that it was their idea and they'll fight harder for it. That's not a secret. I've always found is to make it as personal as possible.
Sure.
In relating back to where they come from. That's why our grassroots efforts and our ability to organize our defense credit unions to put in phone calls, go down to the local district office, talk to the district director or the state director and remind them like, hey, I vote for you. I'm a part of this community. Our kids are on the same softball team, etc., is incredibly important because I get paid and I love it to advocate on behalf of, defense credit unions and the entire credit union industry up on Capitol Hill. I spent 8 years on the other side of that table. Someone that can walk into the office and pronounce the towns right. And knows the local sports teams, the colleges, the history, because they get it. And this is someone that has the same, let's just say, cultural DNA of that office and where that member is from, asking them to support them. And that's what's so incredibly important.
Right, absolutely. All right, Jason, well, before we move on to part 2 of our interview, I wanted to talk a little bit more about looking ahead to 2025 and what you're looking at DCUC. So one other topic that's huge with credit unions is AI and the use of AI. Wanted to ask you, do you see any AI regulation coming down the road? And how are you kind of thinking about that right now?
I think there's going to be. Obviously, it's a new technology. And so Congress, in its infinite wisdom, will come down with some sort of regulation. We would encourage them to not come down with a top-down approach, to understand that many credit unions use AI as a way to cut costs, but while ensuring they're providing world-class service, that they work to ensure that that type of innovation that helps foster and promote mid-size and small credit unions to compete in the same town where Chase Bank is, and the fact that they make more in a profit in a year than we have in assets as the entire credit union industry is not lost. So we're going to be up there talking with the committees on this to ensure that our voice is heard. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of give and take, but we hope to ensure, working through our military advocacy committee, we keep them informed and they come back with real life, real world examples of how regulation or statutes may positively or negatively impact how they do their business on a daily basis.
Well, I do hope they take it up because I remember how slow Congress was, NCUA, people with social media. They couldn't, for the life of them, grasp social media and issues around that. And remember, God, it was finally like 2014-ish, the FFIEC finally came out with some guidance on it. I'm like, hey, ding-dongs, you guys took a decade to figure this out. I hope AI moves a little bit faster.
Well, it's going to move probably in a parallel track with crypto and digital assets.
Yeah.
They're still trying to figure that out. What type of regulation, how much of a regulation.
Sure.
But, the good and bad thing about this experiment that we have called America in our republic is that there are many states that are getting involved.
Yeah.
And as laboratories, they are passing regulation that Congress and others can look at to see what may or may not work. So I think that while we may not be seeing fast movement here in DC, in the state capitals, things are moving at a quicker rate than most people realize.
Yeah. Very quick question, final one here in the main segment. Any particular worries or concerns you have looking forward in 2025?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you're talking specific about worries, obviously the credit union tax status is number one at the top of that list.
Yep.
I mean, when you had former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, mention at ACU's congressional caucus that we're definitely in consideration. And as you talk about Project 2025, the whole Doge movement, and the fact that the incoming administration has called for no tax on tips and, no taxes for Social Security recipients. I mean, $1 billion here and $1 billion there starts to add up. So that's why I think that our members have seen, and I think other credit union leaders throughout the industry have seen, a very specific increased tempo from DCUC to defend and talk about the positives of the tax status and very specifically fight against anything that may threaten it. And that goes back to our concern of the threat to our tax status by changing the Federal Credit Union Act for share insurance coverage for non-members. That keeps me up at night. I think that the continual push by our friends in the banking industry and others to impose CRA requirements on credit unions. We are still very, very concerned about the housing bill that Senators Warren and Congressman Cleaver pushed this last year in Congress. They're both going to be around next year. And while there were some modifications to the bill where it very specifically ruled out CRA or using that term on credit unions, language is still left in the draft of the bill that puts CRA type or CRA like requirements on credit unions if they go into underserved communities. Those are incredible concerns for us. And getting back to the tax fight, the fact that you talked about the newness and new people coming in, we kind of did a rough estimation, or if you're in engineering, we did a WAG in terms of how many members and staff were around the last big fight we had over tax status with the banks. Between 70 and 80% of Congress is new. And so it's the last big fight we've had on this topic. We have to educate. We have to start at ground zero. Everybody's a kindergartner in terms of financial services. That's why you're going to see us up there on Capitol Hill, and we're going to do it with Credit Union 101. What is a credit union? Why is it important? Why do we have this tax status? That keeps me up at night. But I think there's a lot of opportunities as well in terms of the Veterans MBL. And pushing forward on that, the Congressman Hill's bill on the study of banking regulations and services over at DOD is incredibly important. And then one other thing, and I know it's sounding like there's more negative than positive. But what's been rolled into this Doge movement, and people have whispered or talked about it, we've been very specifically talking about it, even including in our testimony over at the NCUA budget, is the importance of a strong and independent NCUA and to not buy into the push for one regulator for all financial institutions. We specifically pointed out when this has been done over and over again, there have been problems. And the fact is that putting the credit unions under FDIC and OCC there is where is that's the start of the path of getting rid of credit unions. Because Congress has always had a separate regulatory called the Bureau of Federal Credit Unions or the NCUA. However that process came along, there was always something separate because of how unique we are in kind of the similar yet different role we play in communities that put people over profit and the need to have that understanding in our regulatory environment.
Amen, brother. Hey, I do want to point out, I want to put a fine point on this, something you mentioned. I will say from our perspective at Credit Union Times, since you have come on to DCUC and your team, everybody's been activated there, you have been beating the drum. We have noticed much more consistently, louder, and more coherently. And so from our end, we love it. So we're thrilled to hear your voice and to see your actions and to get to know you and your team. So I just want to say bravo.
Thank you.
It's been great.
I would echo that. Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's prior to you coming on board, DCUC fairly quiet from a media perspective, but it's been a massive change, and we're loving it. So we really appreciate your sharing your insights from a media perspective.
I appreciate those comments, but I am blessed to have an incredible team to work with, and Haley, runs our communications, and to have the freedom and direction from our CEO and president, Anthony Hernandez, to not be afraid to be a fierce friend and a strong enemy for those that support and oppose credit unions. But most importantly, to have a board of directors that knows and understands the future of the credit unions is going to depend upon the advocacy that we have today. And I'm deeply appreciative of our members and their willingness to pay increased dues, to, make phone calls and do all that type of stuff to fight for their future.
Right.
Jason, you just gave a great 30-second Academy Awards acceptance speech. You included everyone Good job.
Good job. Yeah.
You thanked
Yeah.
everybody.
Right. All right. Well, and as you said,
All right.
Jason, 2025 is going to be a very interesting year, but let's
Mhm.
put aside all of those worries that you listed, things that are keeping you up at night. Let's put them aside for now because it's time to move on to the second part of our interview.
Okay.
And it's the fun part because it has nothing to do with work. It's just about you. So,
Okay.
are you ready?
I'm good to go.
Okay. So, first question. You're obviously out and about, you're going to Capitol Hill, you are wearing suits and ties, looking very professional. Michael and I find this very interesting because we work remotely. We have no office and we rarely see really anyone work related in person. We saw each other once last year in Orlando for our Luminaries Awards event. Anyway, so we definitely are not experienced with dressing up to look professional. Anyway, long-winded way of asking you, do you remember the first suit you ever bought in your career?
Oh, I do. In my career or in my life?
Let's say in your life.
I get you. I come from rural America, and while
Okay.
I grew up in the Black Hills of South Dakota, Rapid
Oh,
City,
yeah.
near Ellsworth Air Force Base. So I come from a lower middle income family.
Mm-hmm.
So my idea of getting a suit for high school debate was shopping at the expensive store of JCPenney.
Yeah.
So it was a nice blue suit, and I wore the heck out of it till I couldn't get any more. So
Blue? Is that what you said?
blue, yes, because it went with the most color ties that I could buy. So
Of course.
Yeah.
Smart.
Well, I love that you said, just real quick, you said you were on the debate team. Was that kind of how you got the political bug, I guess?
even before that, I'd have to credit my grandmothers.
Okay.
Well,
They were around when women didn't have the right to vote.
sure.
And so they talked about that. And
Yeah.
I got involved in politics. I would dress up as Alex P. Keaton, again, dating myself for Halloween. So it was funny. I had a social studies class in high school that was taught by my football coach. So I think football was more important. So I got to teach the social studies class a couple times.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
I just love government because I love the positive impact that it can have upon people if everybody is there for the right reasons and moving in the same direction.
That's amazing. And speaking of Halloween, and not really Alex P. Keaton, but what a pull. Nice job. When the movie Friday the 13th came out, were you excited that the killer was named Jason, or did your friends give you crap for it?
Actually, I'm gonna throw you a curveball on that one.
Please.
I never got asked about that. There's something about me.
Really?
I come from a family of candy makers. So the
Oh,
movie
wow.
I always got asked about was Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I learned to not like, the Candyman canned song.
Sure.
And so that's everyone played that and all that type of stuff. So if there was something to get asked about a movie,
That's incredible.
that's where I got. It was at Willy Wonka. I don't like horror movies.
Uh-huh.
I guess I see enough car crashes.
Sure.
True. Yeah, it's a real life horror movie.
Or rather, watch some cartoons every once in a while. So little
Hey.
Bugs Bunny.
Can I ask you
Yeah.
did your family work at a specific candy company?
Yeah, my family took over. It was a place called Rushmore Mountain Taffy Shop in Keystone, South Dakota.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
I love that.
Then my twin brother took it over from my parents, but he passed away. So we
Oh.
closed that one, but we have our main operation up in Medora, North Dakota, near the Theodore Roosevelt National Park.
Oh my
That
gosh.
my sister runs it. So
You're going to have to come back and we're going to do an hour on candy.
if you'd like to,
Yeah.
I can sit and make you taffy and peanut
I
butter
would.
and fudge and my
Wow.
great grandmother's caramel
gosh.
recipe all the way from Denmark. So
That is awesome. You have
I
to wear
love
your blue
it.
suit though.
I'm a little bit bigger than the blue suit then, but I do have one I can wear now. So
Oh, man, thank you for opening this box of candy for us.
not a problem.
I love
That's
it.
great.
Well, quite the fun reveal.
Yeah.
But that actually kind of connects to my next question. So in Rapid City, which you said is your hometown, was going to ask you what was like the best food, that local specialty. I mean, maybe it's the taffy, that's maybe what we're saying aside from that.
Let me give you my favorite place to ever eat, and is a favorite place for my family. And
Okay.
it's in Hill City, South Dakota. It was about 18 miles from Rapid City. It's this little place called the Alpine Inn. And if you give me 1 minute to kind of explain the history of the place.
Sure.
Sure.
As it was told to me, it was started by a German woman who was married to an American soldier after World War II, came back over here, and he left her. So she started like a little bed and breakfast. And then she started it's a restaurant. It's called the Alpine Inn. So German food like you would not believe for lunch, all the wurst, all the schnitzel, everything like that. But at dinner, you had one option. You had the 7 or 9 ounce filet, bacon wrap filet, the baked potato, the quarter head of lettuce with ranch dressing.
Sure.
And so you would ask, you want the 7 or 9 or all that type of stuff. But it was such high quality. And it was just an amazing place to go. But the pièce de résistance was the bread pudding.
I love bread pudding.
It was absolutely incredible. When I would go back and visit my family that lived in the area, that would be my first stop off the airplane. Is we're heading to the Alpine Inn and going there. It was
incredible
place where you made family memories, and it's the place I miss the most from being in the Black Hills.
Is it still open?
It is still open. It's run by the daughter of the woman who founded it.
Alpine Inn, everybody.
And they do not take debit or credit cards. You must have cash, or you will take a personal check.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, maybe we can drop a link in our show notes.
Yeah.
You should, if you can. It is the most amazingly decorated place at Christmas.
Well, I bet. Oh, I love that. That sounds so nice.
Okay, let's stick with childhood really quickly. We do have to wrap this up. My God, we can talk forever with you. Jason, what was the first album you ever bought or remember listening to?
I like country music, so it would have been Alabama 40-Hour Week in 1985.
Okay, wait. Perfect. Is that with, what's the song? What's the big song back then?
Well, it was 40-Hour Week for a Living.
Yeah.
The main one off that one. But if you're thinking about Put Me In, Coach, that was not on that album. It was on one that I love. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think you're the first to mention Alabama.
I think so, yeah. We've been collecting what every guest tells us is the first album. We actually have a Spotify playlist that we started building on, so that'll be a fun addition. All right, Jason, final quick question before we wrap up here. What was the last movie you watched?
Well, my wife has all three of our TVs tuned to the Hallmark channel since the week.
Okay.
Not that, but this past weekend, I took my son to see the movie Elf at our local theater, and they do like a movie-themed party where they give you, where there's the snowball fight. They gave us like white balloons to have a fight with. We had special themed desserts and all that type of stuff. We had hats that we were wearing.
Dang.
So I was trying to make sure I lived those memories while, the spirit of Christmas is at its high point in my son's life.
Good job, Dad.
Love that. That is so fun. That sounds like a much better experience than just laying on the couch with your remote, right? I mean, actually embody the theme of the movie. Great. All right. Well, Jason, again, we could talk forever, but we do have to wrap it up here. Jason Stverak, Chief Advocacy Officer at the Defense Credit Union Council, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We really appreciate your insights, and it was an honor, really, to have you on.
The honor was mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jason.
And for all of our listeners, please subscribe to Shared Accounts with CU Times anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever. You know how this works. And if you want to rate us, we would love your feedback. And for those of you with questions or comments, feel free to email me over at nchillingarian@cutimes.com, or you can email Michael at mogden@cutimes.com.
And thank you to our sponsor, Bud Financial. Find out more at thisisbud.com. Also, thank you to our producer, Zach Nyheisel. Thanks, Zach. Join us again next week for a new episode of Shared Accounts with CU Times. Until then, thanks for listening.